Welcome, my name is Marcin Moskala and today I'm going to talk about Kotlin, next level of Android development. And you may know Kotlin right now as a language that joins mainstream, you know. It is announced as an official language of Android development. It is used more and more often, you hear about it on conferences. Actually, it was 3 years ago, it was still in beta, and nearly no companies worked in Kotlin. So when people were asking me, what am I doing, they were literally thinking that I work for a ketchup company, because Kotlin is a popular ketchup in Poland. They couldn't understand that I'm not doing Kotlin for money, I'm doing Kotlin for passion. My passion basically led me to Kotlin. And for me, first, it was like a side project. I was just coming back to home after all these hours in work, and I was exhausted with all these stupid problems. And well, finally, you don't need all these null pointer problems. You don't know all these casting problems. It can be smart. So it was like a fresh breath, something I was having fun with after my work. And I just felt I have to work on that. I found I was an early adapter. I worked in one of the first companies in Poland who adapted Kotlin on production, and I felt like that all the time. So I wanted to share my knowledge. I wanted to share with other people. We wrote a book with Igor Wojda, Android Development with Kotlin. And it's, explode right now, conferences, stuff. And I also started a big portal called Kotlin Academy, where we teach Kotlin and we write articles about Kotlin. We have multiple authors, we are preparing course, and different things. So this is about me. What about Kotlin? Kotlin is much longer on this ground than I am interested in Kotlin actually. You might be all surprised, but Kotlin started at 2010. It was 8 years ago. Actually, JetBrains shared it with Word, shared the news with Word in 2011, and shared it with open source, opened the code of Kotlin in 2012. But Kotlin is developed since 2010 in a team, not by some random people. So it is really mature language if you think about it. But it took 6 years to release first official version out of beta. It is very important trait of Kotlin if you think about it. I've made a set of articles about character of Kotlin, and one of the big trait of Kotlin is that it is very well designed. It's developed by JetBrains. They're making great tools. They have all the statistics, how people use their tools, and Kotlin is very, very well designed with a lot of thoughts and a lot of experiments before something is released as stable. And that's why it takes so much time. There are lots of great features right now, like coroutines, which are really, really powerful, but they are, of course, still in beta because they want to understand well how does it work until they will block their possibilities to change it freely. And after this release, other companies started supporting Kotlin. Spring is right now cooperating strongly with Kotlin team. New Spring is designed to support Kotlin, and some features in Kotlin are designed to support New Spring. So these words are working very well together. And this is pretty important because Spring is the biggest Java framework in the world, and Java is actually the biggest language. You can say it's JavaScript, but in backend it's the biggest language for development. So this is quite a big deal. Also, Gradle, which is one of the most popular build tools, is having flirted with Kotlin since 2016. And right now you can make configuration in Kotlin in Gradle. Probably it's going to be the basic way to make configurations. In March 2017, they released 101, very, very important release, lots of great features, including Kotlin.js. I will talk about it a bit more later. We are here to listen about Android. In 2018, Square announced Kotlin as a language they support, and they are developed in. If you are an Android developer, how much Android developers do they have in here? Quite a lot. How much of you have heard about Square? Okay. You heard about retrofit, Dagger. This is all Square, like, and all great other libraries. The best libraries for Android are from Square, and Jack Wharton, Square, they supported Kotlin. They are right now in Kotlin community, and it was a very big event. And soon after that, Android officially announced Kotlin as a next language, as a actually first-class citizen in Android development. But right now, even in Android documentation, Kotlin is you can see examples in Kotlin, and they are like by default, so they are shown before examples in Java. It was a big day for Kotlin community, and since I have a person from Google in here, I would like to thank the Google for this announcement. It was a very, very big change for Kotlin community. I opened champagne this day. This is how Kotlin develops on a Kotlin community develops on Slack and on forum and on users group, and also how number of lines of code grows in Kotlin. You can clearly see where Google announced its news. You can see it even clearer when I show you Google Trends. This is Kotlin, how much people search for Kotlin. This is a day when Google announced it. So it's compared with Scala, Groovy, and Clojure. As you can see, Kotlin is, even after this, it's growing very quickly. Right now it's more often searched than Groovy, and it's slowly catching Scala, so I hope that in next time I'm going to talk about it. It will be, this is from today morning, so it's very actual. Lots of companies use Kotlin. Square, of course, Slack, Coursera, Netflix, a lot of companies. Actually, I believe there was an announcement that 15% of projects were moved already to Kotlin in Android Studio, but it was like 4 months ago, so I think it's even more like now. It's growing really quickly after this announcement. So you see, Kotlin is important. The question is why it is important. What have it improved? And I want to show you a few important traits one by one. I won't display you everything. I will only show you very few traits because we don't have so much time to show you why Kotlin is great. So first thing is safeness. And by safeness, I mean that more errors can be prevented on compilation time instead of taking place on production, basically. It is safer for users because they don't have errors, and it's also safer for developers because they are not fired because of errors on production. So safeness is a very accurate term, and it's connected to very popular, very important gentleman, Sir Charles Core, who said on one conference about his billion-dollar mistake. This has led to innumerable errors and vulnerabilities. You can see he's British, and system crashes which have probably caused $1 billion of pain and damage in the last 40 years. Of course, we are talking about null pointer exception. Kotlin provided good system for null safety. First of all, no property cannot be uninitialized. All properties must be initialized, unlike in Java. Second of all, when we have some type, it cannot be null. You need to explicitly say that this is nullable type using question mark. But when you have nullable type, you cannot use it directly. You need to unpack it first. So there are a few ways how we can unpack it. First of all is safe call. Safe call basically calls right side only when left side is not null. If it is null, it just returns null. Thanks to that, you can make all these snakes, like if person is null, it returns null, so everything else won't happen. If it is there is a person, but school is null, then the same. It won't happen, and whole expression will return null. There is also unsafe call, which is very bad practice in Kotlin. This is basically every call in Java. In Kotlin, it's very bad practice. We are nearly not using unsafe calls. It throws an exception when person is null. And there are all smart casting. I told you, like Kotlin is very smart. It's very connected to tooling, so you can smart cast. It's very, very smart. I'm sometimes confused. How does it know that this property cannot be null? Because some code before there was some check that already excluded this possibility. So if you check if property is not null, smart casting it's not null. The same it works with types and with some other things, but nulls is the most important, I think, feature in this case. There is also Elvis operator. Elvis operator provides default value when left side is null. Comes of course from great hairs of Elvis Presley. But you can also, instead of value, you can also give any expression. So you can give return, so return from function when this is null. It's actually a pretty common thing because we expect some properties or some elements on properties, and if they are not there, we are just finishing function. We are not doing that. So this is common thing to do. And we can also throw an error. So it's pretty powerful if you think about it. Another part of safety is to promote read-only values. They are safety because when we are making multi-threaded applications, it's much easier to work on state when we have less state in our application, where more things are read-only. And in Kotlin, most properties are read-only, and that's why multi-threading it's very simple. When we use val, you cannot change it. That's like final in Java. When you use var, it's changeable. And val is highly promoted in Kotlin, including all the lists. This is immutable list, and you can attach it simply without special addition of elements. And there is also so-called, I don't have time for that because it's bigger subject, but I have whole presentation just about property delegation. These are property delegates that this one provides you value lazily. So it doesn't provide it on the declaration time. It provides it in the first time you use name, it calculates it from the form. But there are much more property delegates you can use, so you can have more properties read-only. And also, it promotes immutability in objects. All collections are immutable by default in Kotlin. You can explicitly say that collection is mutable. The same with other things. So you can of course change them both, but when you have immutable collection, you need to make property mutable. So every time you add some element, you're actually creating new collection with new element. When you are adding, here you have mutable list, where this mutability is kind of hidden because this val looks like immutable, but here it is explicitly stated that it's mutable. So when you add some elements or remove, you don't change this property, you change this list. So it's still explicit that this is mutable. It is easier in terms of multi-threading, but we have it all explicit and clear. And this is about safety. Another thing is object-oriented programming, and I know that functional programming is right now cool. Kotlin also supports functional programming really well, but functional programming has no class, and we want classes since we design Java developers at first place. This is a simple bean in Java. You have fields, setters and getters, you set them on the constructor, it's huge, and it's very ugly. This can be rewritten in Kotlin, and I will do it in steps. First step is that we don't need setters and getters in Kotlin. Properties are having setters and getters under the hood, and you can always change implementation of this setter and getter. So setter and getter are there, we still have encapsulation, we just need to define constructor. But actually this constructor can be provided as a in class declaration as a so-called primary constructor, and when we declare it this way, we can use it during class creation. This pattern should be known from new languages, including Scala. But Kotlin made even a step further, and since this is a very common pattern to make make primary constructor to make some property and fill it, you can just define property in primary constructor and you have the same result. So actually, if you compare it right now, this in Java and this in Kotlin are actually the same things, but this Kotlin class is much more clear and you have much less redundancy. Just think right now that you need to change something in this class, or you apply some changes and you need to read them. You have a lot of noise in here that disturbs you. In Kotlin, it's clear and explicit. Another improvement is data classes. When you have this class we can easily add data annotation that provides a set of very, very common functions. How do I know they are common? JetBrains know they are common. They have tooling for generating them for Java, and they are used over and over again. This is toString, equals, hashcode, and copy is not so used in Java, but this is a different story. We'll tell it in a minute. So first of all, toString. When we have some object, let's say Johnny Bravo, with some age, in Java, toString will generate its name and its hash. So you have no information about this object actually. But when you have data class, it generates toString, which displays all the properties inside. So for logging, for debugging, it is much clearer and just much simpler. Second thing is equals. When we equal to object, Java default behavior is comparing if these are exactly the same objects, but I mean they have the same ID. But in terms of data classes, we are interested if content is the same. So when we annotate with data, add modifier data, it compares every property, and since all the properties in these two persons are the same, it returns true. Third thing is copy. When you copy an object, you have another object with the same properties. This is very important in terms of immutability, because Kotlin supports immutability really well. Because what if you have data classes with all fields immutable? It's very good for multi-threading, but it's very bad for modification. You need a function to change it that will return new object with some properties changed. So you can use copy, which also allows all the properties as a parameters with default parameters with default arguments. So you can make a copy with concrete properties changed. So this way you can have immutable data classes. It's very good in terms of multi-threading, functional programming, and this kind of stuff. This is about classes. Now about conciseness and code reusability. This is important for me because my first programming master were always saying that if you're using Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V in the same project, you are doing something wrong. But I was doing in Java, so it was impossible to avoid it. Right now, when I'm using Kotlin, I can forget about this Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. And the problem with Java is that if you wanted to extract some common code, you've been mostly using some util classes, but they were really ugly and very, very bad to use. Why they were bad to use? Let's look at that. This is a common way how people were defining lists in Java. Later in Java, they defined util for creating this list. But does it really help? It is arrays as list, you know? It's not intuitive. You need to remember that it's arrays and at list, and if you static import that, you have just as list, it doesn't look good. In Kotlin, you just use top-level function, list of, and set of values, and you have list created. Let's look at another example, even more important in this case. This is how you set visibility in Android. So you need to remember that it's visibility property. You need to set this view gone. You need to remember where it is, what is its name, and you don't have suggestions. It is integer. It's not enum. So you need to remember all of that. So it is a bit painful, even when you are an advanced developer. This is how we would prefer to do it. You would want to have view and say hide it, you know? But Android developers didn't include that. What we can do in Java is make view utils hide and argument view. It is even worse than the first attempt, you know? It looks ugly, it's not helpful, and this modifying input, this modifying argument is a very bad practice. So it's something you don't want in your project. When you have string, you want to process it, you want to replace some things and capitalize it. This is how you want to do it. This makes you happy. But using Java utils is not helpful, you know. String utils replace all. It's not expressive. It looks ugly. You would do it differently. So how Kotlin can help us in this manner? First of all, Kotlin allowed functions literally everywhere. You can use top-level functions. You already see one of them, list of. You can use member functions. It's just a method. And you can use local functions, functions inside it functions. They can use all the properties inside these functions, so they're also very useful sometimes. Second of all, you can use extension functions. So extension function looks like it adds some additional method into the class. It actually doesn't. You cannot add method into class in Java, but you can make it look like it does. So it is like a normal method, but you call it on some view. So this view hide is exactly how you can define it in Kotlin, and you can make some view.hide and it's going to be hidden. This is example, very simple example with string processing. So I want string no longer than some size. So I take substring and take minimal of length and maximum. So when I apply it on strings, string no longer than, it will cut our strings after nth element. So this is a very simple example. In general, this extension functions are very simple and very powerful. Who is familiar with extension functions in here? Okay, only few people, because in lots of languages you define it in totally different way. But this gives you some extra possibilities. For instance, you can make extension function to generic type. You can make extension function to nullable type. You add view and question mark, and you have extension function to nullable type. So this is a bit more powerful than most language. The problem is that I don't think it was released because there are two good practices by JetBrains and by Android, and they are both pretty new. I think like 3-4 months they both have, and I'm not sure it was included. At least in JetBrains, I think I haven't seen that. But I know the community most common have like a special file in package that is ending with ext, axt. So when you make extension functions to view, most often you do view ext. So yeah, this is how I do it. Okay. You can also make extension properties. Since I've already told you, properties are not fields. Properties are getters and setters, so they are functions. So they can make extension functions for objects. So extension property for inflator on context. Since then, on every context, you are just inflator, and you have all this long structure made simpler. The same with visibility. Instead of hide and show, you can make is visible and set it to true, false. You notice that you both can provide getter and setter. So getter is checking if this view is visible or not. Another thing is functional programming, basics of functional programming. When we have two functions, these are two functions that are very similar. They are having a bit very similar behavior, but it is hard to extract its behavior because we have operation that differs them. Using functional programming, you can actually extract it very simple. So you just pass this operation as a function type, and you can extract this common code. And this is a general pattern that is very powerful and can be used in higher level. So, for instance, when we have some list of elements, using this kind of functions, we can change from imperative style, which just iterates over list, and if something adds something, we can change it into expressive declarative style, where you just say, I want to filter these elements just to elements that starts with some letter. It is a very powerful pattern that is used in lots of languages. In general, let's say that we have list of students. We can say that we want to filter just the students that are passing. We want to filter the ones that average grade is above 4. We want to sort them by average grade, and we want to take 10 bests among them. So this way we can say we can find best students to give them some reward. This is very it kind of looks like transformation. You just say what you want to achieve, and you just have it. It's much easier way than explaining every time how do you want to connect it all. And it is very simple to implement it using extension functions. And this is simplified code from Kotlin standard library. This is map and this is filter. Under the hood, all it does, it just does the same as you would implement every time. Thus makes collection, iterates over that, and adds some elements to new collection. This is inline function, so it's called are replaced with actual code inside, so it is very effective. This function type is never created actually because its body replaces its calls, so it's very effective way. The same with filter. So this is how we have all our things, our methods for collection processing implemented. And note that it is really powerful that they are implemented this way. Excuse me. If you look again at that, you'll see that it's not collection in here, it's iterable. Iterable is everything you can iterate over. So actually you can make any object, make it iterable. Iterable has only one method, it's an interface, and you can use filter, map, everything you want on this object. Very simple example, strings are iterables because you can iterate over letters, so you can use map, filter, etc. on string. So you can make these kind of operations. Also, the result of the fact that these are extension functions is that there are lots of them, and you can very easily make your own extension functions. So you have a lot of tools for collection processing, and you can very easily add your own. So collection processing in Kotlin is very powerful, very expressive, and you can extend it however you want. You want to make library, go ahead. You want to, I don't know, make your own collection, you can use all of that as long as you implement iterator. So it's quite cool. It also works for string processing. I mean, there are also special functions for string processing, like join to string generates a string from list. It is funny example how you can connect this with another feature that is arguments, default arguments, and named argument convention. So you can not provide any property at all. Default values will be used, but you can change some of these values. Like here, I change prefix and postfix. So instead of nothing on the beginning and on the end, I have these brackets. It is also allowing some functions like transformation. So it is very nice thing. And also, yeah, you don't need to use these names, but it's just better when you use these names, so it's more explicit. Also sorting, really powerful. You can make sort by some property, but you can use some comparator. Comparator are made using top-level functions, so compare by surname name. You have sorted by surname first when they are the same by name. And instead of this lambda expression, you can use explicit reference to the method. So it's making it even simpler. Okay, this is basically about syntax of Kotlin. One very cool feature I'm involved in is multi-platform development in Kotlin. This is a very new thing, actually. It was announced, like, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. It is not yet really mature, but you can already make some application, and I made one quite big application I'm developing right now. How does it work? The point is that Kotlin is not just JVM language. Kotlin can be compiled to Kotlin.js, and since last month, it can be also compiled to Kotlin native. So you can basically make Android application in Kotlin JVM, which is compiled to JVM bytecode. You can make server in whatever you want, including Kotlin JVM, Spring or Ktor or something. You can make your browser applications in Kotlin.js, I've done it. And you can make an iOS application in Kotlin native. Also, among that, you can declare common modules, modules that are not specific to any platform, that are compiled to that can be compiled basically to any platform. So Kotlin team provided an example of that, example application, where they made a common module, which is shared among everything, common JS, common JVM with platform-specific declarations. They made Android web backend application and iOS application, all in Kotlin, pure Kotlin. So it was like 4 months ago, and it's developing very quickly. I myself decided to make a big application to present how can it work. So, and I made an architecture, and I described it in Kotlin Academy, where you can share common parts. The most important part in here is common client, because it contains all business logic for all our specific clients. The point is that when you have Android, iOS, these are different platforms, but they're supposed to behave the same way. So if you have good architecture like MVP, you can have shared presenters and other elements, shared use cases and stuff. So when you do it well, you can actually have most of your application, the logic that needs to be tested in one place, and have one test for them. And it might be very profitable in bigger projects. To show you an example, how does it work? First, common module. Here we have an example data model class for common module. And thanks to serializable annotation, there are serializer generated. It is Kotlin library. We can also provide declarations that are declarations in common modules that supposed to have platform-dependent implementations. So we declare them in common as an expect. This is one of the implementation. I think this is from JVM. So in platform modules, like you've seen common JVM, common JS, you provide actual declarations for these expected declarations. So here was a date time. It is implemented differently in every platform. You know, every platform has its own library for that. So I wanted to have it expected in common module, and in actual declarations, I will provide actual objects for that. And this is common module example. Do you need to stay for that? Because I see you all look at that. Okay, I think we can we can move into common client part. This is a presenter in common client, the very simple one to have it clear on our slides. that is used in my application. And this one works for providing feedback, but the point is that it is used by in our web application, which is written in React, in Kotlin JS in React, and it is used in Android application. But it is common logic code. It just sends feedback, goes back to news. It uses a view that is an interface, so it is typical MVP. And thanks to that architecture, I just have to implement it once. I just write unit tests once, and I can reuse it in all the code. And this is example. Okay, and this is an interface for that. And this is an example activity, since this is presentation about Android, that uses this presenter. I could show you similar component for Kotlin JS. Our ambitions are bigger. We want to implement other clients, and basically it's all possible. iOS it's a bit more challenging right now, but it's all possible. It just needs some time for us. But we want to make like Android TV, Android car. We have already Google Watch. We want to make Chrome and Firefox plugin. There are already projects written in Kotlin for Firefox plugin and Chrome plugin. It might look for you like a magic, but it is not. It is actually pretty simple. And it works good. But it is one way we can do it, one approach with platform-specific code. But there is another one. Since Kotlin allows Kotlin native, so it is compiled to native bytecode, every device basically has some processor. So you can write to every device using Kotlin native, even to browser, since we have WebAssembly, which is a system for running native application on your browser. iOS, the simplest. Android, you also can make games are basically written in native normally. They use the libraries for graphics, and the same with server. So when you have everything native, you can make one framework which is all Kotlin native and uses native dependent features, and it gives extra possibility. So these are two approaches you can do. I mean, there are more, but two most popular, most promising approaches. They are both code native, but they are native in different terms. This one is native from development point of view. This is exactly, we develop applications how we used to develop them. We make Android applications using Android libraries, iOS applications using iOS libraries, browser applications using React or any other frameworks and libraries, etc., etc. This is native in terms of bytecode. So it is native for processor. It is compiled to native bytecode. They are both powerful. Of course, this one is easier. This one is faster. So I think this one is just asking for some good game development library to make it that is written fully in Kotlin from top down. So it might be a very powerful thing in long term. But in terms of normal development, I think that this is going to be popular much, much faster. That's about multi-platform development. I hope that some of you are interested in Kotlin. Supposing you are, I want to show you how you can start your adventure with Kotlin. So the easiest start is to go into Kotlin REPL, try kotlinlang.org. You have some cons over there. You have some examples. You can just play with this language. Also, if you are more ambitious, there are lots of IDEs that supports Kotlin. Android Studio since 3.0 has it built in. I think also in IntelliJ IDEA. Sea Lion is for Kotlin native. Eclipse also supports since the beginning supports Kotlin. So when you can just use one of them, and it's very simple to start Kotlin on basically every one of them. When you choose Android Studio, since we are on a presentation about Android development, since 3.0 you need just to include Kotlin support, and you will have everything in Kotlin. All the templates, basically everything. Kotlin is also very simple in terms of interoperability. You can basically change one file in your project into Kotlin from Java and it will work fine. I've tested it like multiple times. You can have mixed Java Kotlin projects. I know that JetBrains intentionally keep some projects mix Kotlin Java to be aware how do they work together always, even after lots of changes. Also, when you switch into Kotlin, IDE supports you very well. There is Java to Kotlin converter. It changes your code when you copy-paste Java into Kotlin. When you can just click convert to Kotlin and everything is converted. It works really well. I've converted a lot of projects into Kotlin, believe me. And also, IDE supports Kotlin style. So when you have imperative structure, you're just having suggestion to change it into functional style. So it's also very cool. About resources, if you want to learn more about it, Kotlin have a lot of resources. There are talks, there is forum. Slack is very, very active. It's one of the best communities I've ever seen. So if you are interested and you like communities, join Kotlin Slack. It's really cool. We have also active Reddit, Talking Kotlin, and then other resources. I think the greatest resources for learning easily is if you like Android, Kotlin on Android, the Android documentation. If you're more interested in Kotlin, Kotlin documentation is really great. If you like puzzles and challenges, Kotlin cons are also really nice. Actually, it was one of the first things I do in Kotlin cons. I mean, I solved them. If you're an Android developer, you want to migrate to Kotlin, Android development in Kotlin, my book, is also a good start. And also we provide possibilities on Kotlin Academy. The most popular product right now is we call it blog, but it's actually Medium because we have multiple authors right now and lots of resources about Kotlin and lots of news from Kotlin world. We also explore multi-platform development very deeply. So if you are interested in this part of Kotlin, we have a lot of articles about that. We also have other services like we give consultations, we give trainings. If you're interested, contact kotlinacademy.com. And today I've introduced, oh yeah, I have an error in here. Don't worry about it. I will just skip it. If you are interested, I've just introduced brand new feature. I've done it today in 1 a.m. in the night. So after a speaker's party, I've released that. So it's a new thing. I felt that I am missing like news and puzzles for Kotlin. You know, they are everywhere. News and puzzles on Twitter and Summer, but you need to search from them and spend your time. And I prefer like a short place when I can see very short but important news from this world. So I decided I will just implement it. I can very easily add to our portal. So I've started in the Friday. I finished it today in the morning, in the night. And right now you can add to Kotlin Academy portal, you can add newses, you can add puzzles. This is an example news. This about Kotlin documentation is quite new. So I've added it as a first news, but we are going to keep the brand new newses from Kotlin world on our Kotlin Academy. And also we want to provide at least few puzzlers, like quizzes, like challenges for programmers every week. So I think it is going to live well. Okay, that's it for me for today. Thank you for your attention. You're a very great audience.